Shabbat Shalom. It was 2012. I was standing on the sidewalk of Emek Rephaim, holding a blindfold, ready to enter into the simulation. I was feeling excited by the challenge as I tied the blindfold over my eyes, careful to set it so that I could not see anything. But as darkness settled over my eyes, I was surprised by how quickly that excitement fizzled in the face of growing anxiety. Without the ability to see, I became paralyzed by fear. Even my classmate standing next to me, whose job it was to keep me from falling and to whisper words of encouragement, could not help me with that fear. I knew I had to walk, and so I started sliding my feet carefully along the ground, trying to feel every bit of pavement, trying to guess where the sidewalk led. Afraid. I was determined on that day to be the best temporarily blind person ever. But the only award I could have won was the most anxious. These days, living with fear of coronavirus feels like we're all back on that street in Emek Rephaim. We're all flying blind. We can't see who's got coronavirus. We can't know for sure if we're not asymptomatic carriers ourselves. We can't see where the virus lurks on different surfaces, where it's safe to touch and where we should avoid. We can't know for certain which activities are safe and which might expose us unnecessarily. We can't see exactly how fast it's spreading. All we can turn to are news reports with their panic and alarm and scary data. We can't see how long this will last. We can't see exactly what the economic consequences will be, exactly how it will impact each one of our lives. We can't see. And even as we cannot see, we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep living. This is not a simulation. This is real. How do we keep walking when we cannot see? I want to tell you a story. It was 1999. Adina Tal was a well-known director in Israel. And she was approached by someone who asked her if she would ever consider leading a workshop for deaf-blind performers. As Adina shared on the TED stage, what did I know about deaf-blind people? Nothing. Really nothing. I knew a little bit about theater. Theater is the art of communication between actors and between actors and the audience. Adina worked to apply her knowledge of theater to the deaf-blind community. And what she found surprised her. She loved the challenge of working with deaf-blind performers, of adapting theater to be a vibrant art form shared together. That love led her to found the Na Laga'at Center in Yafo, a performing arts venue which features blind and deaf performers exclusively. When Na Laga'at opened its doors for the first performance, it was a huge Dayenu moment. On one hand, it was enough. It was more than enough. Because of Adina Tal, because of this group of actors, they had created a stage on which people who are sometimes overlooked could be seen, could be loved and appreciated in a new venue. When she got reviews saying things like, deaf, blind, and brilliant, Adina and her team felt that they had fulfilled their mission. But then there were other comments too. Comments like, oh, did you see those performers? All of them blind and deaf, so sad. Or comments like, did you see that one actress? So beautiful, and she can't even see herself in the mirror. We have to thank God. We have to thank God that we can see, that we can hear. Those comments were sickening, made Adina feel like this could not be it. She had more work to do. And so she and her partners joined together to create a new project. They built a restaurant in the Nala Ga'at Center. It was performance art at its best. People would come into a lighted vestibule where they would place their order. Then they would be guided by blind waiters into a dining room that was completely dark. So dark you could not see a thing. And there, their blind waiters would guide them through a meal. The idea was to give diners an experience of what it might be like to experience the world as a blind person. But really, there was so much more to it. Adina didn't want people just to experience the world without sight. She wanted them to see that when you are not seeing, sometimes your other senses get the volume turned up. Suddenly you can smell more and taste more. Suddenly you're listening more. And people saw just that. Since 2007, people have been gathering from around the world to go to Nala Ga'at restaurant to have this experience. It's just as the old saying says, sometimes when one door closes, another door opens. Only in this case, it's when you close your eyes that you sometimes discover how to see the best. This is our challenge in this time. Over the past week, my life, which had been very in person with so many people day in and day out, face to face, got moved onto the Zoom screen. There were so many moments that were frustrating. Zoom is not like face to face. You can't just walk into a room and start a conversation. You have to set up an invitation and send it out. You have to click on the right link and put in the right password. By the time you make it into the room, you have to be very careful. You can't rustle papers or move anything around. The screen picks up any extraneous sound and interprets as voice. And when two people talk at the same time, sometimes the sound cuts out entirely. It would have been really easy to spend the week in a space of real frustration because I couldn't see people the way I wanted to. But instead, I chose to take a Nala Ga'at approach. The question arises, what is it that Zoom can teach me? What is it that Zoom can teach me that I wouldn't have experienced if I were just meeting with people face to face? And in that light, it turns out Zoom is pretty cool. In meetings on Zoom, I noticed that because the sound sometimes cuts off when people talk at the same time, people were listening more deeply to each other. We weren't doing the Jewish thing of jumping in on each other before we finished speaking. Each person shared their full idea to be met with another full idea. Things that weren't funny off of Zoom became very funny on Zoom. And the screen shifted. In a normal conversation, you really can only see the person in front of you. But on a Zoom call, you can take in the whole room. You can perceive everyone listening and validating that. Vivi, we experienced this so powerfully today. There was a moment during the Torah service where I felt deeply bummed that I did not get to sit with you on the bima. That's something I look forward to every week, hanging out with our bar bat mitzvah. So I owe you a date. We're going to go out after all of this is passed. But I was realizing that because of Zoom technology, we got to see you shine in a new way. With no interruptions, with no prompting. You led from a place of strength, a place that we got to see even more brightly because you were here on the Zoom screen. And so our challenge in this moment is, how do we do the na laga'at move in our everyday? How is it that we can live in this world with a different set of senses, with a different set of experiences, not shut down by frustration, but opened up to the possibility that this new world has lessons to teach us? To do this, it's not just about closing our eyes. To do this, we have to believe that it's possible. We have to believe that we are capable, and this is something that we have been learning together. 2 weeks ago, we were a shul community that met here at 385 Ward Street. All of our interactions were here in the building. All of our classes were here in the building. We met here in the building to daven with the people that were here in the building. But this week, these last weeks, we've learned to transcend that. We've become a shul without walls. Suddenly, we're a community of people gathered around iPhones and iPads and computer screens, in dining rooms and living rooms, davening together morning and night. We're learning about the ways that our prayer can ground us in this space and in every single space. And it's not just that, we're learning that we can support each other in ways we never could imagine. 2 weeks ago, we had a set way to reach out. We had a set way to do a Shiva call, a set way to go to the hospital to visit someone. But now, we offer our words of comfort in a phone call with written letters. This week, hundreds of Temple Emmanuel volunteers gathered together to reach out in a new way, just to check in, to say hi with people they knew or didn't know. Hundreds of calls, generated requests, generated acts of kindness, runs to the grocery store, trips to the pharmacy, dropping off prescriptions, hearing aid batteries. We've joined together in new ways, and we've learned that when our lives change, we change too. We find new ways to engage. We find new ways to unite. You know, it's just so interesting. In Hebrew, the word for blind people is ivrim. As we say in Birkot HaShachar, Baruch Ata Hashem, blessed are you, God, the one who gives sight to the blind, who opens the eyes of the blind, pokeach ivrim. Ivrim sounds so similar to another word we know and love. Ha'ivrim, Ivrim, the Israelites, the ones who cross over, the one who transcend boundaries, the one who cross over into the promised land. It's no coincidence that these two words look different but sound the same. The truth is, we are ivrim. In this moment, we are blind, but we are also ivrim. We are the people that know how to transcend our blindness to walk forward to the promised land together. Life in the time of COVID-19 is about blind faith. It's not about relying on things we don't fully understand. But it is about believing in ourselves, believing in our ability to see with more than our eyes, to find a way forward no matter what, and ultimately to end up in the promised land.